to Paranormal Umbrella that we host on Friday nights, which covers anything and everything from the spooks to history mysteries. Tonight, we are going to be discussing one of the most long-lived, most talked about, and the most information that we have possibly found ever in the history of ever conspiracy theories, which I don't believe is an actual conspiracy theory, the inner Earth. Okay, and how people believe that there is an inner Earth society and people live there inside the Earth. And we are going to be discussing how this came about long time ago, all the way back to like 10,800 BC. It goes way back into the way back, y'all. And we are talking about these peoples. I would rather call them peoples instead of creatures, because somehow that just feels really disrespectful. That have a hand and secretly kind of guide the evolution of the human race in all things, not just in how we evolve physically, but how we evolve metaphysically, spiritually, how we're enlightened, and how it has come to be the most sought after knowledge and society that there is. Even wars have been fought over this. Well, we'll say that wars have been fought over this because they don't actually want to say that wars have been fought over this, but I believe the war did start.
If they admitted that wars had been fought over it, they would have to admit that it is an actual thing to begin with. And therein lies the problem, because if they're trying to hide something, you can't admit that you're fighting over it.
Exactly. So they don't want to admit that it exists, but they'll pussyfoot around the whole topic, though, that's for sure. Which, isn't something that's new to, the governments of the world.
Right.
They sure do like to acknowledge without actually acknowledging.
Yeah.
Everything of that nature.
And in this inner Earth, this land of Shambala, there apparently exists this king of the world, and he is accompanied by his two other rulers, one that basically rules over the fate of the world and the direction and course of events. But then you've also got the other one that rules over the spiritual development of mankind. And the king of the world is this benevolent ruler that basically sits on his throne and observes all the goings on the planet, and makes sure that we're on course, that we are on our path to higher development, higher enlightenment. And it's interesting because they say that he has the power to literally Thanos snap the world out of existence if he wanted to. Not that he has or that he ever would, but supposedly he is literally the king of the world. And this Shambhala is also ruled by ascendant masters who some of them have come in contact with humanity, like El Moria. He was supposedly an ascendant master that connected with what's her name? Helena Blavatsky. And she actually may have potentially traveled to Shambhala and seen it firsthand.
Now, I have a question about her. Is she the one that did the night school, or was she the one that started the real society?
So she did not start the Vril Society. The Vril Society was actually started by Maria Orsic, and she was an Maria Orsic was an Austrian medium who basically said that she was getting signals from the Boomy alien, which I know all of this sounds totally far-fetched and totally outlandish. But at the same time, there's a lot of information about her that makes you kind of go, like, is there credibility to this? And not so much in a good way either, because Maria Orsic was she's one of the founders of the Third Reich. Like she was the leader of the Vril Society. And the Vril Society is a group of people that actually date even before Hitler. And then they basically come into this, they were basically the writers of the Third Reich, and they believed that Vril Society, the land of Vril, was coming to Earth. Basically, that these Boomy aliens were this Aryan race that were going to basically take over the planet and I guess control everybody in this regime. And obviously,
right? Okay, right. Thank God, but I mean that plays into the whole thing of, and this may be a sensitive topic for some people, so I'm going to go ahead and warn you that in this discussion that we are having about the inner Earth and the conspiracy theory of the inner Earth, it does talk about the Nazis, and it does talk about Adolf Hitler. So we will briefly be discussing them as we discuss the inner Earth theory. So I want to go ahead and give you a heads up on this. So if you don't want to stay for that, I completely understand. Some people, that's a very, hot button issue that they don't want to engage in, and I completely understand that. But just know that we are not glorifying them in any way. We're just stating
absolutely
facts as they pertain to this particular topic. So in this topic, they had this Vril Society came about around the same time with Adolf Hitler, and as my co-host has stated, the Aryan thing that they had going here. Now, here's my issue with this. This was completely separate. This religion of Shambala and this holy place was here for Adolf Hitler corrupted it, before the Aryan society basically corrupted this whole spiritual realm of Shambala and the Tibetan spiritualist that was established before this happened. So it was completely corrupted, much like what we'll touch on this later as well, the symbolism for the hammer of Thor. The hammer of Thor was also corrupted by this whole, and I'm just going to state it, this crazy Adolf man that came out and decided that he was just going to take bits and pieces of, he felt entitled to do so, and corrupt all of these very holy, very spiritual things in different cultures, and corrupt them and twist them to what he believed he could use them for basically ultimate power. So if you could just bear with us while we talk about that, I would greatly appreciate it. So,
and just know that, like for instance, the Nazis, the symbolism, like the their main symbol, I don't want to say it anything like that. But their
No,
symbol.
just call it, the original symbol that it was the for Thor, the god Thor,
Well,
in the Norse pagan pantheon, and it was completely demonized when Adolf decided to make his stupid flag that he made. So
now, interesting connections about that symbol is that it was not only like Thor, but you've also got the Indian representation of that, where you've got like that symbol on the Buddhas, and the Hindu religions used it, and this is a worldwide symbol, and it supposedly originated from Agartha, from Shambala, which is this inner earth world that we have, that's apparently been around since like thousands of years BC. Like, this is one of the oldest symbols in human civilization. So the connection between, like you said, Thor and even like Asgard. Think about it like in terms of, like, you've got Asgard and then you've got Agartha. How similar those two words are. And you've got the Scandinavians talking about Asgard, and then you've got Agartha, which is like Tibetan. So two totally different places in the world. And they're talking about similar things, where the Norwegians considered Asgard to be to the far north. Now, for a long time, people have been debating on the entrances to this inner earth as being at the poles. They've also observed that certain animals and birds actually fly north for the winter rather than south, which has led countless expeditions to find where they're going in the north, because they disappear. And then all of a sudden, when things start warming back up, spring starts coming around, they fly south and they're coming back to their lands. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from this inner world? Now, there's a lot of scientific research that dates all the way back to Sir Edmund Halley, who literally discovered Halley's Comet. This is a man that not only discovered Halley's Comet, but he discovered several other comets in 1531, 1607, and 1682. So this is a man that knows about astronomy. He knows about how planets work. He knows about the magnetics, electromagnetics of the Earth. He knows about the sun, and he actually claimed that it could be possible that a small sun within the Earth actually exists, and that is where our northern lights come from, the aurora borealis, where it's literally exiting the holes on the polar ends and giving us a light show here on the surface. Now, Sir Edmund Halley, what he believed was that there were multiple layers within the Earth, and that actually falls in line with a couple other world narratives, like the Navajo creation story, about how there were 4 worlds within this world. That you had the black world, which was at the very center, and then you had the blue world, which was a little bit further out, but was filled with war and all kinds of just fighting and really murder. And they didn't like living there, and along with the creatures didn't like living there either. So they moved out to the third world, which was the yellow world, and that ended up getting destroyed by the flood. or by a flood, in which that world was basically destroyed because the coyote, which is one of the Navajo's most ancient original gods, which some people have equated to Loki. He's a trickster. Coyote is a trickster, and he stole the water dragon's child, and so the water dragon brought a flood, which then ended the third world, and mankind created or planted this reed which grew up into the heavens, and they climbed that reed out into the fourth and glittering or white world, which is the world we live on today. So there's several different like inner worlds within worlds within worlds that you've got the Navajo talking about it. You've got the same exact concept talked about by Sir Edmund Halley, and then you've got other scientists like John Cleves Syme. He lived between 1780 and 1829, and he proposed that the outer shell of the Earth is 1,000 miles thick, and that there's a hollow interior. And he based that on the weight of the world compared to the weight of the moon. Now, that gets into some really technical stuff that I won't cover here, just because that's on a different level of science-y. So
I'm gonna have to interrupt you for 1 second. I'm gonna make a quick correction here. Most of the information that I have found on the symbol that we spoke about earlier, that was used, although it was also tied to Thor, I was recently informed by a friend that it was originated in India, and it was first used in Eurasia, representing the movement of the sun across the sky. So I want to make sure that we put that in there as well, because like I said, we want to make sure that we get all of the information in here correctly. I don't want to give just
absolutely
basic information in there. So thank you very much, Nebula. I appreciate you calling that out and letting me correct that on here and putting that on here as well. So thank you for that. That's what we want. We want
absolutely.
You guys to be able to say, although that is also a thing, this is actually this, and this. So don't be afraid to be like, hey, although we really do want to be able to give the best information and get it as close to the originated story or heritage or culture that it came from as possible.
Absolutely.
So if you've got the information, if you've got the facts, if you can give it to us, please feel free to do so.
1,000,000%, yes. Now, going back to Alexandre Santiev, he was really the first one to bring Agartha to the Western world. Before then, Agartha was kind of this enigmatic place that the Mongolians and the nomads and the local native people of Tibet and that whole region, it was kind of a belief system. It wasn't really a secret, but it just wasn't widely known outside of that boundary. Just because, this was the 1800s, and that region was still, even today, is very much unexplored. It's a very remote area of the Himalayas, as well as, vast deserts that there's just no way to chart it all, like in a lot of detail. So Alexandre Santiev, he was actually approached by a man named Haji Sharif, and not a whole lot is known about this man. This man was known as basically one of the students of the school of Agartha. Now, when Santiev learned about this because Haji Sharif was actually hired to be his mentor, Santiev's mentor. And he taught him Sanskrit along with the language of the Vatanians, which was the written language of the inner earth. Now, this Vatanian, the writing is unlike anything I've ever seen. And I actually have some pictures that, like, of the writing that I can post in our Discord group, which I have actually linked the Discord to this podcast. So if anybody wants to join, they can absolutely go there and join, and they can see some of the written documentation that we have pulled up. And I'll share all of this documentation so that you guys can do your own research and really jump down this Earth-sized rabbit hole into the subterranean world that is Agartha, because this is just incredible. But as Santiev learned about Agartha, he started getting obsessive about it. And in his teachings from this Haji Sharif, eventually Haji Sharif introduced Santiev to his mentor, and his mentor deemed Santiev not worthy of the knowledge of Agartha, basically saying this was a mistake. Humanity's not ready. You're not ready. So we're done here. And Haji Sharif and his mentor disappeared. Nothing was ever heard from them again, and they vanished, which we can only assume to Agartha. So basically from that point on, Santiev decided to write a book about Agartha, saying, okay, well, I've learned as much as I have, and I think this is enough to publish a book. And so he wrote a book. And when this book was done, he went to go get it published. And there were a bunch of copies made and everything. And then the publisher all of a sudden changed his tune and was like, no, and burned all the copies except for one of this book. And this book was basically Santiev's copy. It was his own his copy of his book that he got to keep. But there was only ever one. And that copy got passed down to his children, and that's how literally the Western world learned about Agartha. But before this copy, before the publisher gave the copy to Santiev, he removed key aspects of it to basically conceal the location of Agartha and make sure that no one on the surface would be allowed access to Agartha until the Agarthians allowed it. And they brought the information to the world and exposed themselves when the world is ready. And from there, we are still waiting. So,
have you seen the state of society right now?
Right? We're not quite there yet. We have a long ways to go.
Yeah, I feel like have you ever seen I think it was a meme that said, how could Rome or Atlantis or Egypt fall because they were such great, societies back in the day? And it's like, yeah, this is it. This is how it happened right here. Right. Now, here's an interesting... Because nobody can agree to anything. Ever.
Now, here's an interesting fact about Atlantis that kind of ties into all of this. So, supposedly, Agartha has not always been inside the Earth. At one point in time, Agartha was supposedly on the surface. And during about 5,000 years ago is kind of when mankind went a little nuts, and Agartha was like, we need to retreat. And it went below the surface. Now, went below the surface, meaning they went into the earth. Now, if you look at the early records of Agartha, dating back like 50,000 years, we're going way, way, way back. Agartha was supposedly located on an island in the middle of a sea, kind of like Atlantis. And then when the earth went into turmoil, basically the Himalayas sank beneath the oceans. Now,
I'm gonna say now, if I had the ability to dip out when, like, crap got real, I would dip out. Like when we were talking Wednesday night about like the Mongolian death worm and how it just dig tunnels and stuff and just be like, nah, I'm out, deuces. And they just like bloop right into the earth, those giant sinkholes and stuff.
Right?
That would be me. I would be the Mongolian death worm. I'd just be like, deuces, I'm out. And just dig myself right into, find a cozy little spot in the middle of the earth. You know what I'm saying? As long as I could take the sky jellies with me, I'd be okay. Y'all missed out.
Sky jellies, yes.
Y'all weren't here listening Wednesday night. Y'all missed out on the Mongolian death worm, the stickmen, and the sky jellies. And the sky jellies are basically giant jellyfish that hang out in the upper atmosphere and just kind of float around eating all of the bad nasties that are in our atmosphere, eating all of the pollution and stuff. They're really just cute little, giant jellyfish or whatever. I mean, if you can bake a jellyfish, it's cute. But that's what I would do.
Right?
Honestly, I'm getting off topic here. But that's what I would do. I mean, if I looked around and was just like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't for me. I would dip out. I would be like, no, thanks. Gone. Take the whole island with me. Why leave my family when I can take the whole island with me? Let's go. This ain't the party we came here for. I'm just saying that's what I would do.
Now, based on the mythology of everything, Agartha, like I said, was above ground, and it was located somewhere beyond to the west of the Himalayas. And the king of the world, basically with the onset of the Kali Yuga, which I think was basically considered the Great Flood. Basically, it was when the whole planet went into turmoil, and with the onset of this Kali Yuga, Agartha didn't just sink; it was transferred. Like just the king of the world was like, into the earth we go. And he just took the whole city and just like teleported it into the earth. And from there, it was concealed from humanity and has been ever since. And that was around 3,200 BC. So around 5,200 years ago is when they dipped out. But they have supposedly kept in touch with different people on the surface throughout humanity since then, including making a connection with the Christ child of the Bible. And, for anybody who knows the story of the three wise men visiting the Christ child, those three wise men were supposedly from Agartha. They were the wise men of the Agarthan schools, the same school that Haji Sharif was from. So,
see,
like
they just
right?
pop up when like some big historic event happens. Just like, I'm gonna take the elevator up to the second level and see what's going on, because apparently this is a really big event and we need to be here to witness this. It reminds me of the Dark Watchers that we were talking about in California last. Like,
they're just watching.
They're just watching and like blooping in, like, here, I'm going to be a part of this like big historic event for a few minutes and then I'm going to dip out. Just long enough for y'all to be like, what was that? And then I'm going to leave. Just to let you know, as a reminder, we're still here. But at the same time, it's like when you said the night school thing, that's the LCW chick, right? From Australia or Austria? I can't remember. It's one of those two. I think, was it Austria?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
Are you talking about Maria Orsic from the Vril Society?
No, this one was a totally different chick. She was supposed to be a psychic who started to, she was interviewed and studied. And she explained that she started to, when she would fall asleep, she was taken from her body, like astral planing, into... Yes, her. And her, at first she was just known by her initials, LCW. And she was taken by an invisible guide to Agartha and taught dances at what she called night school. And once she learned these dances over a course of years, it wasn't just like, okay, you got 6 weeks in ballet, and then you can move on to tap dance and jazz. No, she was just like learning the rhythm of the universe. Then she was exposed to what she referred to as like a giant antenna that reached from the core, like Agartha, from the core of the earth, all the way up into space. Like out into space, and she was guided up there by this invisible guide up into this antenna that emitted out into the universe, into space from Earth, and it resembled the tree again for the Norse mythology, the tree of like God Asgard and Jotunheim.
Yggdrasil.
Yes.
The
and
great
it was
tree.
Right, that one. And that's what gets me, is that you don't have it just in as Meb mentioned before, you don't have it just in, Eurasia and with Tibet and the mentions in Native culture in America. You also have it now in Switzerland and with the Norse mythology and their pantheon, and it's linked to their gods. So it's like, did their gods actually originate from Agartha? And Agartha, then they come from there, and then just be like, you know what? I'm just gonna go screw Earth. Why stay on Earth if we can teleport to the middle of Earth? Why can't we just teleport outside of Earth and make our own realm?
Right.
It's just a thing that I'm contemplating.
Now, there were a lot of explorations done trying to find the North Pole. Now, there are people who, cannot think of the name at the moment, but basically the guy who's responsible for discovering the North Pole is full of baloney, because the dude never discovered it. He even, in his journal, he was like, he was trying to reach the North Pole, and he got to like 80 degrees longitude or latitude. I can't remember which one is which, but basically he was headed towards the center, and then somehow he got off course, like 700 miles off course. Now, you don't just head north and go 700 miles off course. Like, he was following the ice flows, and when following the ice flows, they were expected to be going north. The flows led north, right? Well, they didn't. They led northwest, and as if they were going around something like a landmass. Now, could this landmass be where the opening is to Shambala, to this inner earth? Now, many people have suggested throughout the last 500 years that, and we're talking like scientists and explorers talk about how this opening is anywhere from 400 miles wide to 1,600 miles wide. Now, that's a big freaking hole. Now, if you think about that, like just from the standpoint of the visible horizon, you would not even know you were going in if you were on the edge, because it's so wide that you would be looking at this event horizon, so to speak, without knowing it, because you're literally on the edge looking downward into the planet. But because the hole is so big, you would never even know it. And that's how Admiral Byrd supposedly flew into it in 1947. He supposedly flew into the planet without actually even knowing it, and was confronted with a totally different world full of lush green and this interplanetary sun that lit up the whole interior of the planet. And
that's a negative, Kemosabe. That's a negative.
Right?
No. Mm-mm. See, the pattern is full Ghost Rider. Can't do that. No, thank you. I have a problem with caves itself. Like, I'll go into a cave, like, you know how you force yourself to like face your fears and stuff. Like, I'll go into a cave and I'll be
I am inherently terrified of caves. Like, there's something about the subterranean world that just instills fear in everybody, not just underground.
Me. It's underground. Right? At any moment, earthquake, bam, you're buried alive. You are buried alive. You ain't coming back from that. I can't do. No. Whew. Like, panic. Panic. That's negative. And then there's people who like go scuba diving in caves that are full of water, and they got like that inch or half inch of where it's just enough for you to stick your nostrils up out of the water to get some air.
No.
So he flies a whole plane. He's just gonna fly a whole plane into a gaping hole and just be like, "Yeah, I'm good." That's no.
But now imagine that hole is so big that you don't even know you're flying into it until you literally are inside a whole different world full of lush green plants, animals like woolly mammoths just grazing the fields like no big deal, UFOs flying around, like high-tech society inside the earth.
Yeah, I mean, that would me the hell out. That would me all the way the hell out. Because, okay, just forget the part about you not understanding that you have flown a whole airplane into a giant mouth hole in the earth. Okay?
Right.
But the fact that there is a whole ecosystem in there, and it's just like, that would creep me out even more. That wouldn't make me feel better. It would actually make me feel worse, because now I'm like, and algae and all this stuff is just living their life down here. What else is living its life down here? I can do it.
And like, it's almost like a tropical zone in there, from the description of things. Now, this sun inside the planet, you would almost wonder, okay, wait a minute, how is this even possible, right? But think about it. Now, the scientific theories of this internal sun estimate that this sun is around 600 miles in diameter. That's a big sun.
So there's a sun. There's a sun in the cave.
There is a sun at the heart of our planet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, so in the cave that he went into, he could visibly see the sun?
Yeah. In fact, he thought he was flying towards the horizon, thinking he was looking at the sun that we're used to seeing, when in reality, he was following the sun leading into the center of the Earth. Now, he wasn't flying through a cave structure. He was flying through a gaping hole in the planet. So this wasn't like following a cave that like you and I would find in like the Great Smoky Mountain. No, he was following a cave, like he was flying into a giant, massive hole at the top of our planet.
No, thank you.
Now,
no.
From a scientific point of view, the concept of the Earth being hollow is actually not too far-fetched. Think about it. Okay, so you've got a sun, right? Now, there are historical reports of there being two suns. Okay? Now, this is going way, way back to the antediluvians, before the time of the moon. There's actual recorded time before the moon came into orbit. Which, by the way, the moon is also theorized to be hollow, which NASA had even confirmed in one of its Apollo missions, where they dropped a rover from the orbit of the moon, and it landed, hit the moon, and the moon rang like a bell for 6 hours, which could only happen if the moon was hollow. So not only is the moon hollow, but so is our own planet. Now, you've got the destruction of, based on Sumerian lore, you've got the destruction of another world or another planet that is now our asteroid belt. And could it be that this sun that's now located within our Earth pulled some of that leftover, destroyed planet in around it, creating this structure around this little mini sun? Think about that. To create this hollow Earth with a shell, this sun in the middle of this Earth, our Earth, and creating this hollow dome or this planetary shell around it, which we now call Earth.
A terranium. What you're telling, you're
right.
baking my noodle again. You're baking my noodle again, and I don't like it. I hate it when you do this to me, because now I feel like I'm an ant living in a terranium, and we're all just along for the ride. Because this is weird. Because first we got the sky jellies, and then we had the flying serpents, and then the stickmen, and then we had the dark watchers. And now we've got this whole subterranean civilization that's supposed to be the center of our evolution and spiritual evolution. And you're like, yeah. And by the way, I'm just going to, throw a sun in the mix. Here's an extra sun. Have that. And it's a whole, tropical ecosystem down there. With a gaping hole in the center of Earth. See, that creeps me all the way out, because, what's in there? What's in there? What else is in there? These can't, I know they're supposed to be humanoid and everything, and I'm fine with that, but, what do they look like? You haven't told me yet. I know that they could come off looking like humans, right? Because you touched on the whole thing of, the three wise men possibly being from this, from this subterranean culture and
same with Sharif. He was also humanoid.
Okay, so they can look human, but what do they actually look like? Do we have a description of what they actually look like in this subterranean villa that they're living in this nice little tropical Hawaii thing going on here?
believe it or not, there are supposed to be several humanoid species living inside the Earth. Now, you've got...
We got subspecies of species living down here.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm out. I'm done.
Now, some of these are a little crazy and a little far-fetched, and it's hard to believe. Like, for instance, the mantis people, the ant people, the giants, which the giants are, in my opinion, absolutely believable. We have tons of records all over our planet that giants roamed the earth at one point in time. And now, in terms of giants, we're talking anywhere from 7 to 50 feet tall. So there's a pretty big range there. Now,
that is a huge difference. That's not just like my uncle is, I'm 8 feet. My uncle, you should meet my uncle. He's 10 feet tall. I mean, like, he beats me and, like, totally blows me out of the water. We're talking about, that's a huge difference. That's 50
We're talking
feet.
about giants, like the size of the height of pine trees, like just strolling around.
3-story buildings, 2-story buildings here that we're talking about. That's a house.
Right.
That's a huge difference.
Not only giants, but supposedly this is also the area that dragons come from, where dragons live. But like I said, there's also, you've got the ant people, which again falls in line with the Native American mythology, not just of the Navajo, but also the Hopi Nation, which talks about how the ant people guided them to the surface. So,
right, I remember that one. I remember that because they found the pictures, the drawings of those on caves.
Right.
What was that, in the Nevada area, I think?
In Nevada and Arizona.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So, okay, I can't do giant ant people. I can do
giant ant people. They would freak me out. However, I will say that personal fears aside, the ant people are supposed to be like the most humble, hardworking, like pure of heart humanoid species on our planet. So if anybody's going to be cool, it's supposed to be the ant people.
Okay, look, if I was going to get some, after my initial, like, delirious screaming and having complete and utter terror and just, like, accepting, okay, this is my reality now. Once
you realize they're not going to eat you, then you're like, okay, all right, maybe we'll see if it's all right. We'll see if you're okay.
Are they like... Then I could deal with sugar ants. I don't know if I could deal with giant, like, fire ants or something, because those mofos are really aggressive. Like,
right? Down south, you guys have fire ants and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah, but man, okay, and you had me with dragons, because I love dragons. I love me some dragons.
Too.
Like, I may have to bite the bullet and face my fear. I mean, maybe take a handful of Valium or something before I go, like, dive into this place. You know, do some wacky patootie or something to, like, chill out before I decide to go into this, you know, terranium. I can't do it. I don't know. It's stressing.
Here's another description of humanoids. All right. There was a story about the green children of Woolpit. All right. Now, this took place in Woolpit, which is in Europe, and it was the village of Woolpit. Took place in 1150 AD. Now, these green children supposedly had been following some of their herd of, I think, sheep or oxen that had gotten away from the main herd. And these children were trying to recover them. So they followed these leftover or these escapees to to bring them back, and they followed them into the cave systems, and they came out in the mountains just outside of Woolpit. And they had a greenish hue to their skin, and all they would eat were like beans. Now, they spoke a complete unknown language that nobody from the village of Woolpit understood. They didn't know English or any variation of Latin or European languages, something totally different. And these children were young. Okay. Let me see if I can find. Okay, I don't know. But they were young and like pre-adolescent, like below the ages of 12. Now, the boy ended up dying of malnutrition. He wasn't eating all that much. He would only eat beans, and he eventually died of just malnutrition. The girl, however, she ended up surviving, and learning English. And she's the one that actually relayed how they made it to the surface and how they found themselves on the borders of this village of Woolpit. And they were known as the Green Children of Woolpit, coming from the inner earth.
I vaguely remember seeing some pictures, like they took pictures of them.
I mean, there's a lot of, this was 1150 AD, so like there's actually quite a few paintings and artworks and depictions of these children, and the artwork actually does have the green hue to their skin. Their skin color is straight up green.
Yeah, there's another one. There's a family that was green too in Europe that emerged, and they took pictures of them. And I'll have to find it so that I can post it in our Discord so that people can see them, because I know they ended up having like a whole family and everything like above the surface. And yeah, because they came. I mean, it's not the first time the green children have come up to the surface for that. So I didn't know that they came up in 1150 too. So I'll have to look into that too. But that's crazy.
Now, Helena Blavatsky, going back to her, she started this whole esoteric movement that essentially became a religion called the Theosophists. And she wrote a whole book about it. And it goes into Agartha. It talks about her journey to Tibet, living with the Tibetan monks, learning theosophy in India, and just like basically her whole journey. And it is quite the incredible story, because she went with Nicholas Roerich, and they had a whole expedition where they were on this journey to find Agartha, and they came really close. Now, the closer they got, Nicholas Roerich's, so he was actually considered the Russian Leonardo da Vinci. That's kind of his nickname that he was given, because his art was so incredible. He did incredible watercolor paintings and just some really outstanding stuff. And he was part of this party that was searching for Agartha. Now, the closer they got to Agartha, the more his paintings started becoming inspired by Agartha and the King of the World. And he talks about how he started having dreams and visions of Agartha, and started communicating with this king of the world in Agartha. And the whole party reported seeing UFOs and lights in the sky that would follow them, shining discs glowing in the sky. And what's very important to detail about that is that literally this happened before Roswell and the whole alien, UFO conspiracy, like all of that took place. These are like the OG ufologists. They are the original ufologists because they were being followed by these UFOs long before UFOs were even popularized or talked about. And then all of a sudden, they disappeared. The whole party vanished for 8 months. Now, were they abducted by aliens? Were they abducted by, were these alien UFOs not so much alien, but Agarthian civilization aircrafts that they were basically like, okay, this party's getting a little close. We've been communicating with them. They're good people. They're spiritually on the right path because these people followed the belief system of the Himalayans, like the Mongolian people, the Himalayan people, like they shared the belief system, and because of that, maybe they were just deemed worthy. But they were essentially transported into the inner earth and were missing for 8 months. And then all of a sudden showed back up on the surface like, oh, hey, guys, how's it going? Like no time had passed whatsoever. And everybody was like, where were you at? And they were like, okay, boy, do we have a story to tell you.
And here's the wild adventure that we went on.
Right? And then then Blavatsky ended up starting her whole book. And like there's books called one of the books that was written by Ferdinand Ossendowski, who I believe was also on that in that party, that exploration party. He wrote a book called Beasts, Men, and Gods, The Mystery of Mysteries, The King of the World. And like you can actually like read that book. Like this is stuff that we should totally read because it talks about Agartha, it talks about the Hollow Earth, the Puranas of India. You've got the Vedic culture that remains inside the earth. You've got this is a rabbit hole that literally leads to the center of the planet. And like I could literally go on and on and on about this. This like we have literally just barely scratched the surface. We have talked about Santiev. We have talked about Maria Orsic from the Vril Society. We've talked about Helena Blavatsky. We've talked about Nicholas Roerich. And this, I mean, this goes... Say again?
LCW, the lady with
right?
the night school.
And like this is just scratching the surface. These are just people who have had their own journeys with Agartha and Shambala and their stories of the inner earth. But I mean, this goes even way beyond that, and NASA gets involved, and even the first man to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong, got involved
Yeah.
with this. Like Neil Armstrong believed that there absolutely was, a hollow cavity inside the earth that, this whole advanced civilization believed in. Now, he was suspected to have actually ventured into one of the openings on a totally different continent in South America, which we can talk about in a different podcast, because there's no way to cover all of this in what is now going on beyond an hour. We have passed our time.
Which leads me to tell all of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate all of our faithful listeners who have come, not only for the Paranatural Cryptid Preservation Society on Wednesday nights, but also our Paranormal Umbrella that we have every other. So I really appreciate everyone coming out and listening to us. And we've got big things happening for us in the future. You'll be able to listen to us on other podcast places, which is a big secret. I'm not going to tell you anything more. But we're also going to be launching our website soon, including our merch that we are working on. So stay tuned. Keep listening and keep supporting us. I really, really, really do appreciate it. We both do. Thank you so much. And it also comes to bring me to our next Paranormal Umbrella session is going to be a continuation of the Hollow Earth theory. And we're going to be discussing Neil Armstrong. We're going to be discussing NASA. And we're going to be discussing how this has ties into astral plane and lucid dreaming that is attached to spirituality and the spiritual awakening that most people are feeling in the now. So join us not next Friday, but the following Friday for Paranormal Umbrella on the Hollow Earth theory, and next Wednesday night for the Paranatural Cryptid Preservation Society. Thank you guys so much, and we hope to see you then.
Yes, and just a personal thank you to all of you guys, because this is a lifelong passion of mine. When I was like 12 years old, my grandfather gave me a copy of Jules Verne, and Journey to the Center of the Earth was one of like the most influential books that I've in my life. And that really sparked this lifelong passion that has, almost bordered on obsession. I mean, I spend hours and hours and hours researching this stuff because I'm so fascinated with it. And it makes me so happy that I've been able to share it with all of you guys and, hopefully spread some of that passion to you, and you can take it and run with it and, find new stuff, connect new dots, and really bring some of this to light. So thank you guys for everything. And we'll continue on Wednesday.
Yeah, and don't forget to follow our Discord or join our Discord if you haven't already. We've got the link up here posted, and we also have an Instagram that's also on mine and Khelek's stereo. So follow that as well, and we will see you guys next week. Thank you so much.
Yes. Have a good one.